The outcome that I want is not the AI companies lose a lawsuit and pay us a bunch of money, right? The outcome I want is for the AI industry and the content creation industries to work hand in glove and come up with a compensatory system that's fair for everybody.
Hello, and welcome to the Media Copilot. It's a podcast that explores how AI is changing media, journalism, and content creation. I'm Pete Paschal, longtime tech journalist and founder of the Media Copilot, and I'm excited to bring you fascinating conversations with fellow journalists, media executives, and the people building how the business of news will work in the future. I'm excited this week to talk to Nicholas Thompson. Nick is the CEO of The Atlantic, one of the oldest and most influential publications in the US, if not the world. In recent years, however, The Atlantic's also earned a reputation as a rare media success story. It's profitable, and that's thanks to a large subscriber base, more than 1 million people, that pays for its unique brand of journalism, analysis, and commentary. It's also been ahead of the game with respect to AI. After ChatGPT's debut, The Atlantic formed a task force to research what AI would do to search traffic. Hint, it's not good. And then it worked hard to pivot away from a Google-dependent strategy. The company also signed a licensing agreement with OpenAI last year, which at the time, its editorial staff was not really that happy about. We talk about that. Nick and I also talk about the coming era of AI agents, The Atlantic's rules about AI, and a lot more. Nick is both an enthusiast when it comes to AI tools and a realist about how it's going to change the way people get information. So I found the conversation really illuminating. If you've heard Nick speak, you know he's really open with his thoughts on all this. And it was great to drill down with him on AI and the media and hear how someone in charge of an influential brand is thinking through this extremely tumultuous time for content and the media. I hope you enjoy the podcast. And if you do, I'd encourage you to share it with a friend or a colleague. I'd also be grateful if you'd consider subscribing to the Media Copilot newsletter if you haven't already. Links in the show notes. Oh, and just a couple of notes. First, I'm offering a monthly class on AI for beginners. It's only 60 minutes, and like everything I do, it's focused on practical takeaways for media professionals, people in journalism, PR, communications. And it's only $49. Each one is a live class, so it's always up to date, and I guarantee you'll walk away with something you can apply to your day-to-day. You can sign up at mediacopilot.ai. Also, for deeper, more comprehensive training, I'm offering 2 extended courses in the fall. Each one lasts 6 weeks, and one is for journalists, and the other is for PR and comms. Now, these are loaded with lessons on things like deep research, how to automate workflows, and building your own AI agent. There's tons of live workshopping, plus you get to do a project that's personalized for you, so you're guaranteed to upgrade the way you work. You can sign up for those courses at, where else? mediacopilot.ai. Okay, now here's my conversation with Nicholas Thompson, CEO of The Atlantic. Nick, welcome to the Media Copilot.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. This was fun.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm super thrilled to talk to you. So I'm a tech journalist, so I've certainly been a follower of your work at Wired and the New Yorker and other places. I've seen you speak a lot, especially about AI lately. Wish I could say there was going to be a lot of variety in this interview, but we're probably going to talk mostly about AI.
I love talking about AI. I'm always happy to talk about AI.
Nice. Yeah, actually, I really love your perspective because not only are you obviously a media leader, you're a journalist, but you're also like an avid user of AI. So I'd like to sort of start off just getting kind of a zoom out from those vantage points as those 3 things. How has your thinking about AI itself evolved over the past year, especially now that you're the Atlantic's a partner and we've seen so much progress with things like thinking models and now agents?
I've become more excited by it. The progress has exceeded my expectations, right? The things that the models can do when prompted appropriately and used in the right way are extraordinary. I knew they would improve, but it's interesting to watch and to sort of ride along the improvement curve. I've become more worried about the effect on our business, like less certain that anybody has the answer to where media goes in an age of AI. And intellectually, my focus has shifted a little bit from kind of long-term effects of AI to I'm more interested in like shorter-term issues about how you get explainability into the models, how you implement it into an organization, how the structure of product team changes. So a little less focused on some of the really interesting long-term questions, and a little more focused on some of the fascinating shorter-term questions.
Interesting. And I'm very interested in like what you just said about how you're less certain about where it's going. You would think almost that things would start converging and consensus would emerge, but it sounds like either the pace is just more rapid or things have happened that you didn't expect. So what is it? Unpack that a little bit for me. Have there been sort of really surprising things to you, either on the tech side or on the sort of business model side?
So
What's less
the thing
certain?
that has happened that I anticipated, right? We were very early at the Atlantic. We knew that search would go away, right? We knew that Google would transform from a search engine into an answer engine, right? And we did a study. ChatGPT came out November of 2022. We probably did a study in February, March of 2023 about what would happen to our Google traffic as this happened. Like what searches would we lose? How would it affect our business, right? So we have known this was happening. We've done our best to prepare for it. You know, we're not really that prepared for it, even with the 2-year head start, but there we are. So that's not a surprise, right? And where everybody in media now knows this, and everybody sees this, and everybody can see their search traffic plummeting, everybody knows it's going to continue. I have been surprised that AI search, we have not yet figured out the kind of replacement model. Like there are AI search engines, they're wonderful. I use ChatGPT all the time. I use Perplexity all the time, right? I use ProRata, I use Nomi, right? I like all kinds of stuff. None of them have actually figured out a model that drives any traffic, substantial traffic back to publishers. I thought by now we would have had that a little more figured out. But the thing that is creating the uncertainty is just looking out into a world of agents, MCP protocol integration, and trying to think through what the web looks like in a world where we're all sending out personal agents to gather information for us as opposed to visiting websites. I don't yet have a hypothesis. Like I know what we're going to do now. I have a sense of what we should do structurally. I don't know what we're going to do in a post-web agent-filled world. I don't know what the role of information sites is going to be.
Yeah, I definitely get that. Have you been messing around at all with the latest agent stuff? I'm thinking specifically of Perplexity's Comet browser, and actually we're recording this just a few days after ChatGPT agent just came out. I actually haven't used that one. I don't have access to it yet.
The agents right now don't really work, right?
Hmm.
So you can't. I mean, some of you can get it to work for like a limited task, and I actually haven't used the Comet browser yet, but it's on. Got to get going on that. They're not yet efficient, and there's a hypothesis that maybe they won't become efficient. Like the same tool, right? If the goal is to converse fluently and act reliably, you can either have one or the other, right? It's like one of the critiques. I don't know if that's true. I just think at the moment the bots can converse fluently and they can't act reliably, but they'll get there. That's my working hypothesis. Um, so I don't think we've really seen what the future will look like, um, which is part of what makes it hard to model.
Hmm. Yeah, I've been messing around with Perplexity Comet for a bit. I'm actually really excited about it because of the agent capabilities and having it on in the background while I'm doing other stuff. But I think to your point of it not acting reliably, I'm encountering that the more I challenge it. So, for example, I used it to fill up a shopping cart with some simple snacks for a game night I was hosting, and that it did that really, really well. But when I actually challenged it to do the entirety of my grocery shopping, it kind of fell down.
Right. And it like buying you like tungsten cubes in a new car, right? Like,
It's almost like how they kind of quit halfway through sometimes when even just on normal answers. It was a little like that. It was like it kind of got a third of the way through filling the cart, and even though it had access to my order history, it didn't do a great job. But to your point, I do think that's a fixable problem. And in a year, I might be just using it to shop for everything. But to your
do you
point,
think you'll be using it for reading? Do you think you'll just send your agent out and say, hey, these are the kinds of stories I want to read today. Please go find them?
yes, I'm already doing that to a certain extent with prompts and sort of like monitoring a beat, so to speak, and bringing me a daily report with some sort of custom stuff I've put together. I do expect that to continue, and I hope that with more context and knowledge of my browsing history and things I'm interested in, I won't need to do as much of the customization, right? I'll just go like, give me what I'm interested in today. So I do predict that'll happen more and more. But sort of tying together these two ideas, right? Like people are going to presumably start using these agents more and more, and people traffic is slowly going to be replaced by bot traffic. So you mentioned sort of in terms of business models, oh, we don't have something that will give us traffic reliably in the AI world. Um, is that will there ever, like, in other words, I assume you're talking about human traffic as opposed to bot traffic, because certainly the more people are using these browsers, and this sort of occurred to me as I was using them, sorry, these agents, in that the bot traffic is just going to skyrocket, and those bots need to be informed by context, which again is content, and so presumably if it needs the right context for whatever action, I think there's kind of an opportunity here for media. It's kind of amorphous right now, and it's too big for me to get my head around. But assuming everyone ends up having their own personal agent bringing them information, and not just articles, I'm talking about like the context to inform what they are doing, or you know their digital life in any particular day. That could be something. Again, I don't know. Like, what are your thoughts on that in terms of, if the answer isn't traffic, is bot activity an opportunity here?
Totally. There's definitely an opportunity here. This is why I haven't like resigned my job and, jumped into the river. The question is, as the web shifts from humans to bots, the strategy for a media company, of course, is to hold on to the humans through as many means as possible, right? And that's what we're doing, right? That's why we prioritized our app, prioritized our newsletters, increased our print distribution, all that stuff, right? So you do the best with the humans, right? And you try and you continue to get as many humans as you can to your website, right? And you do search engine optimization to get as many people you can through search, particularly the ones that are the highest value. So you do all that. But then when you think about the bot economy, all right, so there are a couple of economies that could exist. We could just move to a pay per scrape model, right? And every time a bot scrapes the site, they have to pay us. If they don't, we block them, right? Cloudflare has now enabled that. God bless Cloudflare, right? So that's one possibility. We could also move to like, actually, your bot has to buy a subscription, or your bot has to be, or we do like a giant licensing deal. Let's say there are 7 companies that create individualized bots. We make a deal with one of them. They pay us a couple $1 million, and we let all of their customers, their bots, read the Atlantic. I don't know. Could you have advertising, right? So that like if a bot wants to read the Atlantic, it can read the Atlantic, it can scrape our site, it can summarize it, but it also has to like at some point during the day say something nice about Converse sneakers to the reader, and Converse sneakers pays us money, right? Like you can imagine that too. So there are these different economic models for the bot web. So we need to monetize the human web, and we need to monetize the bot web.
For sure. And I think, we already obviously have a good idea on how to monetize the human web. The bot web, the framework is still being hammered out. And I do feel like everyone seems to be kind of waiting for something, whatever that is. And it seems like these court cases that everyone has made over copyright are a part of that. I don't know if that's the only thing. Obviously, there's regulation as well. But I guess from your vantage point, obviously as a CEO of a company that's both done a deal with one of these companies, with OpenAI, as well as part of a lawsuit, I think, against Cohere, like what is your perspective on like the next milestone here, and what has to sort of shake out to get us closer to monetizing this bot web? Or is it something else? Is it more parties like Cloudflare maybe enforcing this bot blocking activity? I don't know.
Yeah, there are a couple of options, right? So there's lawsuits, right? So clearly everybody's kind of waiting for the New York Times versus OpenAI. That's the canonical lawsuit. A whole series of lawsuits have been decided, or in various parts of the process, they've been decided in different ways and different interpretations of fair use, most recently involving books, less about publishing. Those cases will sort out when the OpenAI Times case either gets decided or more likely ends in a settlement. That will help build a market. So that's one thing. There's regulation. It's not going to happen in the United States, certainly not in this Congress, but it could happen in Europe. And if there's regulation in Europe that the AI companies then feel like they have to follow there, they may effectively follow it here. There could be state regulations that lead to some kind of an action. So you've got courts, you've got regulation, then you have other players in the tech stack, right? So Cloudflare is the best example, but you could also have some kind of an ISP. You could have other operators saying, hey, there needs to be a fair exchange of value between the AI companies and the content creators. They could sort of force that, as Cloudflare is doing. There could be kind of market opportunities, like you can imagine. It seems unlikely, but if the public really cared about this issue, like they could vote with their feet and they could decide, like, they're all going to use OpenAI instead of Perplexity, or they're all going to use Perplexity instead of OpenAI because one is a better policy towards compensating the people they scrape from. So you can imagine like a public market opportunity. So there are a whole different bunch of different leverage points. Sure, what I think is most likely, my guess is that the most important thing that's happened is Cloudflare, making it very easy to block all these bots and creating a market.
And in the whether it's monetization through a licensing deal or a lawsuit, I feel like they're kind of like opposite sides of the coin, right?
Well,
And
I should say one more thing, right? Like,
yeah,
I actually don't want this. The outcome that I want is not the AI companies lose a lawsuit and pay us a bunch of money, right? The outcome I want is for the AI industry and the content creation industries to work hand in glove and come up with a compensatory system that's fair for everybody, as happened in search, right? Google searched the web and, created a lot of value for itself from our content, but also drove a lot of value to us because it drove traffic, right? So there was like this, it was a fair exchange of value. Lots of people in the publishing industry feel like Google got the better side of it. I actually was fine with it the whole way through. I would like something like that. If there is a way, and I don't know what that way is. The obvious example of links, like probably not it. There's got to be a creative way that, because it's in the AI company's interest for the content creation industry to stay in business. So, they're kind of eating us right now. They stole our data. They used it to build these giant machines. They kind of lied, cheat, and steal as they did it. We're paying the price, but it's not in their interest for us to go out of business. And so it's in their interest for us to thrive because then we feed more stuff into them. So there is a way through this.
yeah, it feels like part of the answer, at least to me, is sort of discerning the difference between training AIs and what is just commonly referred to as RAG, I guess, and the real time access to news, which obviously has a value and is kind of more akin to syndication. And so it seems like if it, to sort of propose almost a grand bargain, it would be something along the lines of, you can train your AIs, but as soon as you're doing something that's substituting what we're doing and not, compensating in some way, then that is that's not okay. So is possibly, I guess my question is in terms of the rag side of this, because I know Neil Vogel over at Dotdash Meredith had said something along the lines of, even if I had 4 or 5 deals like the one I have with OpenAI, that's not necessarily going to sustain the business. I don't know if that's true or not, or if that's just true for Dotdash Meredith. But there was a time where I was thinking, as these deals were starting to be made with OpenAI, oh, there are other AI makers. There's Claude and Anthropic, and then there's obviously Meta, even Microsoft and others. Maybe there are enough of these players out there that are interested in giving their users news effectively through their AI portals, that this could become the new, at least a big chunk of the new economy, maybe not all of it, but the central pillar of it. But I guess it depends on like whether people demand news through those platforms, certainly. And then is there an equilibrium in terms of the cost that they're willing to pay that would be sustainable for the media? And you tell me.
Well, it also depends. I mean, so Neil is right. Like the amount of money you get for licensing your content isn't that much. And it's dropping quite a bit because, training data, there was a very brief window where training data had high value for the AI companies, and it doesn't anymore. And it doesn't because you can get everything from all these stolen data sets. You can go to Hugging Face and you basically can get the whole internet, right? So why would you pay for training on the New York Times when you could just download the entire archive of the New York Times off Hugging Face? So there's all of this illegally pirated content that they've trained on. And then not only that, now that they've trained on it, they've built these wonderfully efficient models that can create synthetic data and train on the synthetic data. And in fact, synthetic data, in some ways, maybe it's going to end up being worse. Maybe it'll end up being better, right? DeepSeek trained in a highly sophisticated way of using synthetic data. So that's the kind of the training data. Like there's no, I would like us to be paid for the original sin of using our content in the training data. I would like the illegally pirated versions to be taken down. I would like people to pass, but that's the economics of that aren't going to work. It is, what you say is absolutely correct on the RAG. So then the question is, fine. So that is of high value, right? What we published today about what has happened today is of huge value to all of those AI companies you just mentioned. What we need to figure out is how to actually sell that to them, because like they may be able to get a headless browser and scrape it anyway, right? They may be able to like, maybe we syndicate it to some external partner and then they scrape it, right? Like there's lots of different ways for them to get a hold of it. So we have to figure out how to prevent them from getting a hold of it and then how to sell it to them. So it's a two-step process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it seems like there's a lot of like you sort of allude to there. It's kind of like the honor system of robots.txt, and then it seems like that's become obsolete. So Cloudflare stepping in, and this whole idea that once information's kind of out there, it's out there. I get sort of presumes that like you would need a certain level of good faith participation from the AI side of things, but I guess some people who are maybe more cynical think they're going to need some extra motivation, and that would maybe amount to one of these lawsuits being successful.
Yeah, they are going to. I mean, the people who run the AI companies, like I do think that they, for the most part, are good actors. I spend a lot of time with a lot of them. I trust them personally in lots of ways. Obviously my interests as the CEO of a media company diverge from their interests in many ways. But I do think that they would like this market to work, and they certainly don't want it to end up in like endless lawsuits. So there are solutions out there, and we're making our way towards them.
Let's switch gears for a minute, because I'm really curious about your perspective on using AI as a media company. And so, well, first tell me, like, what are you guys doing over at The Atlantic with AI? Let's start like with maybe public facing things, like what user experiences.
There's not a lot. There's not a lot of public facing user experiences. We have a lab site where you can test some of our AI experiments, and we use AI to read our stories out loud. We used AI like a little bit of translation. We're building different variations on AI search for internal search. So if you go to Atlanta.com and search, there'll be different AI tests running.
Nice.
We don't do a lot of public facing stuff with AI. We do a lot behind the scenes, or we do more behind the scenes.
Is that because you're a little skeptical of some of these experiences that are out there? I know there's a number of media sites that have experimented with chat bots, like not just site search, but you can like talk to the site in some ways. Do you think that is a thing that The Atlantic is interested in, or just what do you think of that idea in general? Someone sort of like coming to an answer engine that is specific to a media site?
I mean, it's pretty easy to imagine how it could go horrifically wrong. I mean,
True.
we're a magazine founded by Ralph Waldo Emerson. We've got a serious brand, or we're doing really well. Like the last thing I need is like a Nazi bot on the site.
Well, assuming you could fix that, assuming you could put in guardrails, and essentially, I think this is what the Post has done, and some of the experimenting the Journal's done. They've really steered it toward making sure it sticks to whatever is in the archive, and then it just says "I don't know" when people try to break it.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly talked about that. We did build a little bit of an internal search engine that you can experiment with on our labs.theatlantic.com. I don't think it's an amazing user experience. Like I've looked at external sites, I've tried it. I don't think it's something our users desperately want. I don't think it adds a ton of value, and it does have some risks. So that's not, once the Wall Street Journal has a bot that answers questions and is amazing, sure, we'll follow them and do that. I think that like the really good use case, right? And the thing that's great is like customer service, right? And so our customer service team moving to an AI platform, right, with the same number of customer service agents that we had 6 months ago, but they can handle many more queries, right? Like that's where it's useful. using it to, write your job descriptions, using it as you do research. Like the most valuable thing we do with it is through our paid marketing, where we, identify the sentiment of different stories, match that sentiment to stories that have done well in paid marketing, use AI to figure out the language through which we'll promote the stories. Like my view is that like public facing AI, I haven't come up with a use case that's amazing. And I haven't seen a use case that's amazing. It's also very high risk. Background AI, amazing, great, crushing it, like so valuable in lots of ways. I wish everybody on our staff used it even more, right? I'm using it hours a day. So I think it's great. It improves everybody's efficiency, like in my view, 20-25%. I think everybody should be on it.
Nice. That's good to hear. I've been, obviously a user myself, but I've been aware of the what's going on in media, and then Business Insider sort of famously is in when they were doing their layoffs a little bit ago, they pushed hard and they were all in on AI. They're really big on AI literacy. Is that something that you offer, encourage? Like, how do you think about it with the staff? Because I also know internally, so the staff might have been skeptical, I guess, of the deal that was made. I guess it was a year ago now, so maybe things have they've gotten a little more used to it. But I guess internally, like, what is both the sentiment toward AI and also how are you encouraging its use?
Yeah. So the editorial staff did have some voice, some skepticism. You may have read the Deal with the Devil story. Um, they have strong views. The editorial staff reports to the editor in chief. The business staff reports to me, and so I make deals that I think are in the best interest of the Atlantic. In general, the editorial staff's pretty happy with how the business side is done because we've made a lot of money and hired a ton more reporters. They weren't as excited about that deal, but here we are. On the question of education, yeah. So we do internal training sessions with OpenAI, right? We have a partnership with OpenAI. So they we'll send people, they show us how to do deep research queries. We have Slack channels where we discuss tools that are being used. We have a newsletter that goes out on everybody else's tools. We did something really interesting recently where we took one of the teams and we required them to do a deep research query using OpenAI, like identify a problem and do a deep research query, and then like report back on what you learned, just so you learn how to use that tool because it's so damn helpful. I would like everybody on the business side to start doing deep research queries to like really experiment with Claude. We're trying to figure out how to, use Vertex and have our engineering team like clean out the old queue of Jira tickets. Really sort of move some of the engineering projects along more quickly. So we're providing resources, providing tools, paying for tools, doing education, getting it used internally. This is where I just think it's a win-win-win-win-win, right? Like there's no reason why anybody here on the business side shouldn't be using it constantly to prepare for meetings, to get your pitches right, to like vet your pitches, to like analyze your notes, like all the stuff where just having a 24/7 extremely smart colleague who's right at your beck and call can be helpful.
Nice. I do think I heard you say once that the one thing that is definitely off limits on the edit side is doing copy, AI generated copy. Now, I'd love to talk about that particular use case for a minute because I often say it's the most obvious use case and it's certainly the most dicey one when it comes to media. But some people are doing it. So, sort of last fall, ESPN was, I would say, one of the first to operationally do it in sort of a public way. I'm sort of not counting those missteps of the early days of generative where some brands were trying to do content at scale and not really overseeing it properly. But since ESPN started doing it, recently Fortune and I think even Axios are doing things that are along the lines of like co-authored stories, which is to say the AI probably does a good chunk of the first draft, but there's a lot of human editing slash contribution to what ends up being published. Does seem like this is kind of an emerging use case. Thoughts on this?
It's probably good for other publications, right? There will definitely be AI native publications that use it soup to nuts. There'll definitely be some publications that use it as a co-author. For the foreseeable future, we won't use it. And we won't use it for a couple of reasons. So one of which is our readers really like the personal relationship with the writers, right? They care about having an emotional relationship and a real connection. And, our magazine was literally founded by humanists. So we're going to, we say the magazine is written by humans for humans. So that's reason number one. Reason number two, the Atlantic writing it's distinct, it's different, it's beautiful, it flows. Like AI writing it's getting better, right? But it still kind of stinks. Like when you use AI and you use it throughout the journalistic process, you notice that, I think this is true of any job that you know really well, there's stuff it's great at, right? It is like really smart at sort of structural suggestions, reading through notes, comparing transcripts and what you've written, right? Like there's stuff that it's awesome at. And there's stuff that it's useless at fact checking because it gets so confused, right? And it's not a particularly good copy editor. And it's a terrible writer. So that's the second reason. Like it's not good. And if you're writing like generic stuff, right, or you're writing like a very simple story about a very simple thing in a formulaic way, go for it. Right? And who knows? Maybe in 2 years, maybe in 3 months, I don't know. Maybe this issue will go away. It'll be a really good writer, but it's not. And then third, there's an interesting copyright question, which is like, we don't even know who owns the copyright. If you use Claude to write an essay and you put that essay on the internet, do you own the copyright? Maybe does it depend on the sophistication of your prompt? So it's just not something to mess around with. And I feel like the minute we started to do anything with AI prose, we would lose the reader's trust, right? So the journalists don't report to me. I have no idea what's going to run on the Atlantic.com today. None. I don't know anything. I don't have any influence over them. I am writing my own book, right? I just wrote a book about running at the galleys. It's pretty good, right? And I used AI nonstop as a research tool, right? Like, help me understand exactly the physiological effects of ketones, right? Like, help me understand, exactly, like, what is the difference between, like, why some people say Catherine Switzer was the first person on the Boston Marathon, and some people say it's Bobby Gibb, like, when did the story diverge? Like, whatever it is, right? Whatever thing is on your mind. Great thought partner. I didn't have her read a word. There's not one word that came out of AI for the book, in part because I think it's bad, and also because I don't want to lose the reader's trust. Like, the reader needs to know that every word came from Nick and was typed by Nick. So, incredible partner, but didn't write anything. And I think that's the way we should continue to do our journalism for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and like you said, the word trust really resonates. And I think with regard to using AI as either an author or a co-author, you need to sort of think about that trust with the audience as well. Like, how does that change your relationship with them? And that's why I also think a lot of these use cases with AI writing, from what at least major publications are probably going to remain fairly fringe, and more experimental, and kind of just see if it is something that I guess you get more out of than you're putting into, because there's a considerable amount of human oversight that would be needed to sort of make sure that it doesn't devolve into slop, right? And I would certainly make a distinction between what these folks are doing and slop, which I think is just more almost the purpose of the content. But
I think slop's going away, right? I mean, like, slop was the last generation models, and anybody who thinks that what they do, Megan O'Rourke had a great essay about this in the New York Times recently, where she's like, people who call it slop haven't used like the new sonnet, right? It's not slop anymore. But I also do think that, like, I feel it as a reader, right? If I read an essay and it's like the byline is by Joe Smith, co-authored with AI, I roll my eyes and I don't want to read it. I don't care. Even if I have like friends and I know they used AI in their books, like, I don't read it as carefully. Like, you just don't. You want it to be the person. And of course, I'm sure I read lots of things where someone has used AI to write it and I don't notice it. But it's just not it feels gross. I don't want to get into that at all.
Yeah, no, I hear that. Although when expanding from what we were talking about earlier, certainly humans as the audience will have a certain aversion to AI authorship. But there will probably be use cases where it's for bots in some way, because they don't care if a bot wrote it; they just want content, and if they're ingesting it in some way for
actually,
the
here's
bot
another
economy.
interesting argument. This is not the main reason. Please don't ever share this publicly. But here's another reason. Like, I would like to be able to sell the Atlantic's RAG data, right? I would like to, as we talked about earlier, I would like to be able to license our content. I think that if you use AI to create content, the market value of your data will be much less, right? There
Mm,
is some value, but like the value to the AI companies is if it's actually human data. And so again, like that's not really priced into the market. Nobody else cares, but it's something I've thought about, which is as soon as you start to make AI to write your data, not only are you less, distinct, not only are you maybe disrespecting your readers, you're also kind of creating, like right now, every single thing that has ever been published by In the Atlantic is human data and verified. And I want to maintain that. It's like pure, 100% pure, not 99 and 56 100ths. It's 100% pure.
yeah, it's a big reason why Reddit got so valuable so quickly.
Mhm.
And their massive corpus of human created data. Of course, a lot of it's kind of like sarcastic jokes, but
Yeah,
AI
that's
is pretty
jokes and
good
like
at figuring that out
pornographic
too.
memes. But in any case, but that's different now because what percent of Reddit is now human and what percent is AI, right? And if I was an AI company, like Scale AI became a $1 trillion company, not by using AI to create a bunch of data, but by hiring a bunch of smart people to create data, which they then sold to the AI companies, right? The market value of human data is very different from the market value of AI generated data.
Yeah, agreed. It's almost like the difference between like display and programmatic in a sense, just to
Mhm.
use an analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, just as we wind down here, I'd love to. You've talked been very open about your AI use. I'd be curious of the what your favorite tools are right now, and also like what have been your unlocks in terms of your AI use? Like there's certain kinds of prompting that I do and teach that I think get great results, whether it's a framework or specific kind of use cases. But how do you use it?
So I use it for lots of different. So a couple of things that I think are really useful that I do. I mean, I do all the stuff. Like we've all read Ethan Mollick. I think he's great, right? Like do what he says you should do for your prompts. A couple of things that I do that are distinct. I have a custom GPT bot that is just focused on my training. And so, I'm an ultra marathoner. I love running, specific goals. I've uploaded my goals, my race schedule. I upload my diet. I upload everything. I upload my workouts. And it gives me advice, right? Like, this is what you should eat today. This is what you should focus on. This is how you should train. This is why you should have, like, I don't know, ground up flaxseed instead of whole flaxseed, whatever it is. Like, it just goes through like a lot of nutritional stuff. That's great. Um, and so that it's like a very specific one. And now that it has good memory, the memory, these things used to have total amnesia. Now they have partial amnesia. But it now remembers everything, right? It knows that like my right ankle is a little more sore than my, left ankle. Like it understands, exactly what my lactate threshold was when I had it last tested, whatever. So that's really, really useful. Another thing that I've been doing that has been great is I do tons of interviews and tons of, on stage stuff. Obviously I use it to prep, right? Like help me. Last week I was interviewing Mark Benioff, Will I Am, Jan LeCun, Jeff Hinton, all different interviews on stage in Geneva. Great. One of the things I did is I would say, okay, imagine you are Mark Benioff. Respond to these questions. I like mock out the conversation. I can't do it exactly, right? And you upload some transcripts of Benioff interviews, but it gives you a better sense of how the interview is going to go.
Mhm.
And like, how would Jan LeCun respond to this question, right? And I found that a really helpful way of preparing for interviews. So that I think is key. Um,
Yeah, I've done that too a few times. Disclosure: I didn't do that with you, but I did bounce off and got a few question suggestions from it. But when I have done that, I got to confess, it does feel like, am I being creepy here? Like, should I be doing this? And it's kind of like,
it does feel a little weird, but it also helps. The other thing I just like, some people don't realize like uploading documents is great. I was like we have a pond and like the aerator broke. And I uploaded the instruction manual for the aerator and the solar panel it runs off of. And like, here's a photograph of all the fuses. Here's the instruction manual, right? And like, instead of just like, hey, help me fix my aerator, it was, this is the aerator, this is a photograph, this is the manual, tell me what to do. And then it told me like, okay, it's the fuse on the compressor, go order a new part. So like on the way to fixing my aerator.
yeah, it's kind of like, I often say it's like this, and it's sort of like YouTube, but it also adds this interpretive layer on top of it, and it's almost like every YouTube video that's ever been done on the thing you need to do, it knows,
Right.
and it
Totally.
can just kind of like give you the answer right away. Yeah, it's super smart that way. I often use it. Like, I'm not a coder really at all or a developer, but I've often inserted code onto my personal website based on what just pasting in stuff from the back end to ChatGPT. It tells me what to do. I feel like a whiz. I feel like I'm like some web developer now. Um, so yeah, it's super handy. Okay, like zooming out just a little bit more as we wrap up. So I know you've written a little bit about the responsibilities of journalists in democratic societies like ours. What do you think now in terms of like generative AI's role there? Is it ultimately going to enhance that or erode it? What where's it going now directionally, do you think?
Well, directionally, I mean, I don't know. Look, it's a great reporting tool, and if I was still a journalist, I would like to think I'd be writing twice as many stories, or be writing stories in half the time, or writing stories that were 20% better. I don't know. We should certainly improve the kind of reporting you can do, right? And like, finding a great story is like finding a needle in a haystack, and this gives you like a magnet to help find the needle, right? It's very useful. So directionally, that's great. On the other hand, it really is hurting our business model. Not the Atlantic, we're doing great, right? Like our numbers are all up and to the right, everything's fabulous. But I have on my wall, you can't see it, but over my left shoulder, I have a list of the like existential risks to us, and AI is number one. The way it will change Google, the way it will change audiences, this agent-based web problem that we talked about.
What's number two?
I can't tell you that. That's a good question. So I worry, like I've often thought that the closer you are to the creation of AI, like the sooner it'll blow you up, right? So plumbers are like pretty far away, coders are closest, journalists are second closest. So there's, it's going to really dramatically change our business, and maybe it'll work out to the Atlantic's benefit because, we'll figure out the solution better than others, and then there'll be a market opportunity to hire great people from other places. Maybe it'll end up being net positive all around because we'll solve this kind of audience question. Like we'll figure out in partnership with Google some great new way that this works, or Perplexity will change. I don't know. But I do worry a lot. So it's great for individuals. I think there's certain individuals, particularly ones who have a real human connection to the audience. Those kinds of journalists will thrive, but it's not easy. It's not going to be an easy next couple of years for media publications.
Well, let me that's a really nice transition to what, let's call it the final question. So if you weren't the CEO of the Atlantic, but instead the CEO of OpenAI or Anthropic or one of these major AI companies that are defining the future of this, how would you change? What would you do to, I guess, ensure that AI isn't considered a threat or doesn't threaten the media world? What changes could you make?
I would immediately license the content, right? And I would go back through and I would compensate everybody whose data we took without fair compensation. So that's step number one, right? So then you've kind of like, you've atoned somewhat for the original sin. And then I would basically try to identify the different things of value that we could do for media organizations. And so driving someone who will eventually subscribe, or in fact, making it possible to subscribe to the Atlantic, right? Like, let's say I'm the CEO of Anthropic. If Claude right now has no external links, but if you could figure out a way that an answer that we could figure out, like basically ProRata has developed technology that can determine what percent of an answer comes from a certain source. So now I'm CEO of Anthropic. I've licensed ProRata software. I've built my own version of it. I now determine that an answer comes from the Atlantic above a certain threshold. Like 17% of this answer is from the Atlantic, and above 17% trigger action A. Action A is at the bottom of the answer. I say, hey, this came a lot from the Atlantic. You can subscribe here, right? Something like that, so that you're then driving value back to these publications. Anthropic does that. I don't know. Anthropic has driven 2 subscriptions to the Atlantic in the last year. Maybe it drives 20,000, right? And then suddenly, like, business works. So I would be doing experiments like that.
Nice. We'll leave it there. Nick Thompson, thank you so much for taking the time and giving your perspective on.
Oh, so much fun. I love talking to someone else who's like super deep into this and loves AI and loves these AI tools, but also sees the concerns. I live in this funny world where I'm both optimistic and I love this stuff, and I'm so concerned. And people who have both those views, who like love the tools and are like optimistic about how it works net, but super concerned about media, that's like a small little grouping. So it's good to chat.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do it again. We should do it again. Maybe on the other side of that New York Times lawsuit or something.
That'd be great.
When that finally happens. Thanks for listening to my conversation with Nicholas Thompson. If you like what you heard, please just take a minute to leave a rating or review for the Media Copilot in your podcast app. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Media Copilot newsletter and check out MediaCopilot.ai for our classes on AI for journalists, PR professionals, and communicators. Be seeing you in the future.